Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to introduce the SGS webinar for Artificial Intelligence in Medical Devices. My name is Gregory Jacobson. I'm the Sales Director for the SGS North America Medical Division. Your speakers today are Willy Fabritius, Balazs Bosic, both from SGS, and special guest Christopher Gates from Valentium. Balazs is our US-based Technical Director for MDD and MDR. Willy is our Global Head of Strategy for Information Security, and Christopher is the Director of Product Security at Valentium. First, a little bit about SGS. SGS is the world's leading inspection, verification, testing, and certification company. We have over 98,000 employees in over 2,600 locations around the world and expertise across 7 global industry sectors. We provide assistance and expertise with global support and services that cater to all industries. We are the largest provider of audits, certification, training, and advisory services. We have the ability to turn your needs into comprehensive solutions with a consistent service delivery via our worldwide network and global footprint. We have highly experienced quality and regulatory experts in the medical device certification area, ready to offer training to you from our SGS Academy. At the end of the presentation, we'll have several links to you for the SGS Academy. An email will be sent later with a link to this recording and a copy of this presentation. There will be Q&A at the end, so please put all your questions in the chat box so we can discuss them at the end of the presentation. There will be a survey on your screen. Please fill it out at the end. So thank you for joining us today. We'll start with Balazs, then go to Chris, and then to Willy. Balazs.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. So welcome, everyone. AI is a super broad topic. AI for medical devices is also a super broad topic. So with this webinar, we are basically kicking off a series of communications to the interested parties. We are going to talk today, we are going to give a general lay of the land, a general introduction, and then we are going to give you additional resources should you want to read further into different aspects of AI. We have a couple of white papers, and the links are going to be provided to you after this presentation. So today I'm going to give just a very brief definition of AI, a brief history of how we got there, importance and benefits of AI in medical devices, some examples of AI-powered medical devices, the current state of AI in some medical device regulations, focusing on some key markets. We are going to briefly touch upon some of the hot topics, some of the challenges and ethical considerations, and also look at how we see how AI is going to shape medical devices. And of course, we are going to, if you have any questions or if in certain areas some of our manufacturers may need some help, we are going to go over how SGS can help. So it is important to point out that there is no single definition for what is artificial intelligence and what are machine learning enabled devices. Each jurisdiction and regulator may have their own definitions. So the manufacturers will need to essentially assess this for themselves for all the markets where they want to market their devices. But generally speaking, various AI definitions typically focus on the AI's learning ability to acquire knowledge or new skills and the intelligent nature. And from this, the important aspect and the key aspect of an AI-enabled device is its changing nature. We have a definition for machine learning-enabled medical device from the IMDRF, which is the conglomeration of the regulators. And so from that, they said that a machine learning-enabled medical device is a device that uses machine learning in part or in whole to achieve its intended medical purpose. There is one definition in Europe, in the EU AI Act. It means software that is developed with one or more of the following techniques and approaches. It can have machine learning approaches, including supervised, unsupervised, and reinforced learning, using a wide variety of methods, including deep learning, logic and knowledge-based approaches, and statistical approaches based on estimation, search, and optimization methods, and can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, generate outputs such as content, predictions, recommendations, decisions influencing the environment they interact with. So this is how we look at AI systems in Europe. As for the timeline, people have been thinking about artificial intelligence for a very long time, but before 1950s, there weren't really a technical solution to implement any of this. So it was mostly just philosophical considerations of what we would consider artificial intelligence. With the advent of the first computers, and with the Turing test, for example, that was the first question: could we distinguish the response generated by a computer if we don't see the response? Just maybe someone is responding in another room and someone just brings back the answer. Would we be able to tell apart if that answer has been generated by a computer or by another human being? That was the first test. We have already seen some AI implementations and applications for gaming, like chess and Go. Then in 1956 was when AI was first officially defined by John McCarthy in the Dartmouth workshop. And in this event, they talked about reasoning as a search, neural networks, and natural language as some of the key cornerstones of artificial intelligence. In the 1980s, we have seen some expert systems already popping up, some domain-specific applications. Then from 1993, AI started to ramp up. We have seen some intelligent agents, probabilistic reasoning with the access to deep learning and big data. And then since 2020, we see a wide proliferation of and wider adoption of AI-enabled tools. And of course, the application and regulatory acceptance in medical devices as well, and that brought some of the challenges to the forefront of the regulators. You have seen, or you can see in this timeline, a couple of gaps. There were periods, decades sometimes, when the whole concept of AI has been shunned, either because some premature attempts backfired and it was not accepted by society. So it really was also a cultural change, not just a technical development. Some importance and benefits of AI in medical devices. So overall, the goal is to have some improved patient outcome. And there are a couple of ways how AI can help. It can help with efficiency and accuracy, browsing through large data, doing pattern recognitions, finding trends in, for example, diagnosis, reducing human errors. We can also, through processing larger amount of data, we can have personalized treatment, comparing patient data with others with similar diseases. It can have robotic assistance in surgeries, for example, to reduce the human limitations of the surgeon. It is also, of course, like all computer softwares, it can run for a longer period of consistent attention and monitoring. So if that's a requirement, then that can also help. And these functionalities can also be assisted by AI algorithms. And it can also help bringing innovative products. So it can have different novel type of data collection, revealing hidden correlations, leading to new healing pathways. So it can enable the generation and the research of new types of medical devices and medical solutions. Just a couple of examples of how AI-powered medical applications already help, and some of the things that are already out on the market, or some of the solutions that we currently know that some of our clients are developing and working on. One big topic is diagnosis. This is based on the FDA. I think this is the leading group of AI applications at the moment. So image acquisition, reconstruction, fusion of images from different imaging modalities. Then a big portion is computer-assisted diagnostics in the field of cardiology, radiology, sonography, MRI images. Then we have in vitro diagnostics and companion diagnostics, and treatment planning, for example, implant modeling, both for dental and general surgery applications. Then when it comes to treatment, we already talked about surgical robots, anesthetic delivery systems where AI can look at the different parameters and can assist with finding the right mixture and quantity of anesthetic agents, automatic external defibrillators when the AI can have a better way of responding to the vital signs of the patient on which it is used. Hearing aids can help and over time adjust the hearing compensation frequencies in a hearing aid. So AI has many applications also on the treatment side. When it comes to prevention, that's a really interesting one. There's many ways. I mean, preventive devices are kind of a niche across all medical devices, but there's a lot of applications already: heart attack prevention, prevention of clinical depression. So it's not only physical diseases, but to prevent any mental diseases or mental illnesses as well. Also preventing viral outbreaks, for example, or epidemics. So also, decision makers can use AI for health modeling for the society and population as a whole. Some of the supporting tools can also be assisted by AI and can benefit from AI: patient record management, picture archival and communication systems, customized medicine, custom medical devices, generative implant design, for example, to make the lightest but sufficiently strong medical devices. Then we can have medical device software development tools, so tools that are AI assisted by generating computer algorithms or assisting the software developers with software quality assurance tools and software testing. We can have security tools, and Chris is going to talk more about security tools. And AI can also help with clinical research, again, pattern recognition and finding consistency and inconsistency in clinical data. So to look at a couple of select markets, for example, in the US FDA, currently they are executing its artificial intelligence, machine learning based software as a medical device action plan. Please note that this is only for standalone software, so it's SAMD. It does not cover embedded software, but probably the principles also apply for embedded software. For new devices, they have rolled out a good machine learning practice for medical device development in 2021. For software changes, there's a couple of guidelines that manufacturers can use. First one is when deciding when to submit a 510(k) for a software change to an existing device. Then they have the software pre-cert program that was rolled out in 2022. This is still in the pilot phase, so it is not fully rolled out, but you can learn more over this link. You guys will get all the slide deck. Marketing submission recommendation for predetermined change control plans. So it's a PCCCP for AI ML enabled device software functions. So this is a big deal. It was issued last year, and basically this will help. I'm going to talk a little bit more about change control for AI enabled software, and the FDA is once again seems to be pioneering this by already putting a proper framework in the hands of the manufacturers to design the post-launch lifecycle of their devices. Also, similar to Europe, AI is not only used for medical devices, it's used in a wide variety of applications. So the White House actually has rolled out an AI Bill of Rights, and they also rolled out an executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. So for medical device software manufacturers and developers, I would also recommend not only going with what the US FDA is prescribing, but also checking out these additional documents. But it also, at a glance, it can also give you an idea and maybe just the overall structure that there is not one single regulatory document that regulates AI. It is always kind of a patchwork of different guidelines and different regulations that will be applicable. And of course, I didn't even mention standards, but there are a bunch of standards underneath as well. In Europe, as one of the other leading markets, there is an AI Act, which was published in 2021. And it is not yet, it is not yet fully effective. I will talk about that. So it will be common regulation to all products, not specific to medical device software. So it will regulate AI used in any type of application in any part of the industry, not just medical device industry. The main principle is trustworthiness. So there has to be human agency and oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, societal and environmental well-being, and accountability. And this is a risk-based approach. So this act shows the different risk levels. There's going to be an unacceptable type of AI application which will be banned in Europe. There's going to be high-risk AI application, and AI used in health is generally falling in this category. There will be general purpose AI, limited AI, and minimal AI. So those will all have different levels of control and different levels of regulation. What we know so far is that it will likely take effect before 2025, and there's going to be roughly 2-year general transition, but there's going to be different transition for different types of AI applications. So for example, the unacceptable ones will be banned within 6 months after it will be rolled out. And for the general purpose AI, there's going to be typically a 12-month transition period. Also, the AI Act is not the only document. So far, we have seen a couple of publications. So the SOCIR has conducted and committed to regularly update analysis on the impact of AI and the medical devices in EU. So they have published a paper on that one. In Germany, BfArM is working with the WHO and ITU to lay down the foundations of an effective and EU-compliant AI framework for health applications. So these are ongoing initiatives, but we already have some deliverables and some work results from these working groups. In the UK, they have also published a paper called Regulatory Horizons Council Report on the Regulation of AI as a Medical Device. So these are also good references if you plan to go into these markets. Some challenges and ethical considerations are bias, for sure. That's one of the big ones. I'm going to talk each one of these in the following slide. Another very big topic is change. How are we federating the changes? What are the post-market changes, the algorithm change protocols? So that's one of the key topics. And as I already mentioned, one of the key tenets of an AI-enabled software is that it can morph and change as time goes by. So to what level of change do we allow? That is regulated. I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. Controllability and human oversight. There has to be, again, I'm going to talk more about all of this later. So one is to avoid overtrust. We should have enough transparency and explicability for it to be trustworthy. It should have the robustness and security, as we already mentioned, and it should adhere to our ethical considerations for the target population on which it is used. So there are some considerations that are exclusive to each other, or at least diametrically opposite to each other. And so the AI application has to cater to these different types of ethical considerations, like transparency versus confidentiality, or efficiency versus human control, fairness versus accuracy, etc., etc. So if we look at these one by one, the first one is bias. So bias is a systematic difference in the treatment of certain objects, people, or groups in comparison to others. And treatment can be any type of action, including perception, observation, representation, prediction, or decision. So that means that we can introduce bias in any part of the AI lifecycle, and that can distort how the AI is giving responses, any type of response. It can be a diagnosis, it can be a pattern recognition, or anything else. But if we are introducing biases, we can distort the model, and then it can no longer be fit for purpose, or at least not the full functionality. I also have to point out that because during the software development and the teaching of the AI database, test data is being used. Often manufacturers don't consider the ISO IEC 90003 standard, which is referenced from the 62304 software lifecycle standard. According to this standard, which is generally the application of ISO 9001 for software companies, but it is also directly applicable for ISO 13485. According to this standard, test data that is used during the software design and development process are considered monitoring and measuring equipment and should be controlled per ISO 13485 2016 clause 7.6. So such test data should be properly qualified, should be securely stored, and should be prevented from changes and losses. Only that way, as a manufacturer, can you ensure that you have the trustworthiness and you have the traceability and you have the explicability of how your AI has been trained and why the weights of the different neural nodes are as they are. So this is very important that in subsequent or future software audits, you will be challenged whether you control your test data in accordance with the standard. So a couple of details. This is a very busy slide, but don't worry about it. These are basically three big elements here. The first one on the top left corner is what level of change do you allow? So do you fully lock your software after release and you don't allow any subsequent changes? Or do you allow changes within predefined boundaries? And this is what the PCCP from the FDA guideline is currently talking about. And the other one is change outside the predefined boundaries. And that is typically not allowed by any regulatory jurisdiction at the moment. So what the regulators in the leading countries allow is one of the first two types. So your AI-enabled software should either be locked or it should change within predefined boundaries. The bottom left portion is the federation of data. So it talks about how the data can come back to the original training database. Is it allowed or not allowed? Can such additional learnings only be or should they only stay local, or can they impact the master training database for this AI? So that is also a design decision for the manufacturer. There are pros and cons, and some of the documents that we are referring to explain the different pros and cons of the different methods. The right-hand side is about who can make changes. Can only the manufacturer make changes to the AI-enabled software, or can the health environment, can the end user also further train the database and how they can use it, and what is the responsibility relationship between the manufacturer and the end user when the software is being changed. So these diagrams are explained in more details in some of the source documentation that we are going to provide to you, or at least the links that we are going to provide to you. Controllability and human oversight, as I already mentioned, there are different levels. So you can have the human have full direct control over the software, all the way to having no control. And in between, you can have some limited control, supervisory control. And the software is obviously running faster, and the tool is running faster if the less the human interacts, but the less control the human may have over the result or over the outcome if the bigger chunks the computer does by itself. So it's again one of those decisions of how fast do we need the result, how much data do we need to process, versus how much control do we want to have over the process. So that's another consideration. When it comes to transparency and explicability, obviously for every AI development, and the development is not only the coding portion, but it's also the training of the AI data set and database. And so it has a bunch of steps, and basically under the hood, all AI systems are explicable to some degree, and it is somewhat deterministic, but we can easily lose track of this if some of these steps are not traced and documented and logged properly, and then we can lose the transparency and lose the explicability, and then it's just going to be a bunch of magic factors that cannot be reproduced in case of a database crash, or if we introduce bias, it will be very hard to roll it back. So that's why it's important to have proper traceability and explicability along the whole AI development process. And with that, I'm handing it over to Chris. Please carry it on.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're in an interesting point in time right now. I mean, back in 2022, the FDA approved 92 AI-enabled devices. In 2023, last year, it was 108, and this year it'll be a lot more than that. And yet there are worldwide over 200 AI cybersecurity regulations that are in development. So when you start to look at what's applicable to my work, pick one or two. It's insane how quickly this is changing. Regulation and standards cannot keep up. And so you're always going to be behind the 8 ball on doing this as you work into it. And overall, security for us with AI is a double-edged sword, because for defenders, if you break this up, you have the promise of automatic secure code generation. You don't have that today. In fact, automatic code generation today is less secure than human written code, as revealed in recent studies. We have things such as the promise of automatic threat modeling for secure designs. So the topology and the dividing up and the interfaces can all be automatically derived through AI. This will be great. Problem is, we don't have it today. All this stuff is sitting out there. And even the promise of self-defending medical device systems. So as they realize they're under attack, they can actually take actions against it to protect themselves. This is great. This is definitely on the horizon. We know we can get to these places. But notice all of those are the promise of, not here today. Today, however, the attackers have got a lot of tools. Current threat vectors of data input poisoning, model extraction attack, membership inference attack, model inversion attack, property inference attacks, sleeper agents, which really scare me because they're intentionally placed in and they sleep and no testing will ever reveal them until it has its trigger element, or all can be used. Even what we're doing today is the promise of highly efficient side channel attacks. A couple of years ago, Google's demonstrated how effectively you can do things like side channel attacks compared to how humans can do them. They reduced oversampling for things like power monitoring using a chip whisper from tens of thousands down to single-digit samples, and still were able to back out encryption keys using this AI. So at the moment, we're in a highly non-stable influx environment from a regulatory and a legal perspective, and our tools just haven't caught up to us yet. They will, and they'll hope to balance it, but at the moment, we're not in that position. Next slide.
Well, this is the area where I then take over. So Chris and Balazs, thank you very much for this overview. I think it's clear by now that an AI system, regardless whether it's in medical devices or whether it's in the medical device industry or whether it's somewhere else, requires effective governance. And here I would like to propose to have a very strong look, very in-depth look at ISO 42001. And this is, by the way, a picture that was taken recently in Vienna last year at the SC42 meeting. And I'm pretty sure you recognize the guy with the pink shirt there, somewhere in the middle of the picture. So I'm privileged to participate in this SC42 working groups. And it's very, very important for me to emphasize that because it's such a complex environment and ecosystem, we do need strong governance. And this is what ISO 42001 will provide and is providing. So why do we need it? Or should I say, why was there even the discussion many years ago on the ISO committee level whether we need some kind of an AIMS, an AI management system. Well, at that time, there was a lack of widespread regulations and non-ISO standards. But obviously, as we heard earlier, now there are regulations. But I think actually, because we have so many regulations on a global scale, we do need a very strong governance system to really make sure that all those regulations are considered when designing our management system and subsequently delivering our products and services. And yes, there are a lot of different ISO standards out there, and I really would like to point out 23894, which is a risk assessment standard. Please have a very close look at that. And guess what? We all have heard about the PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act or principle, and ISO 42001 is based upon that as well, because, well, it's following the high-level structure of all management system standards, as we know. And the question would be obviously, why do we need something like a management system? Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to that it is scalable. It's applicable or can be used by organizations of any and all sizes, from literally a one-person organization to a multi-billion-dollar company with hundreds of locations globally. And that's the benefit of an ISO management system. I think most of the audience have heard about ISO 9001, the quality management system for, let's say, general manufacturing and, let's say, normal companies. But then there's obviously also the ISO 3485 that is very prominently well known in the medical device industry. All of those management system standards have fundamentally the idea that something needs to be documented properly so that it can be executed in a repetitive way. So bear with me one sec, please. So ISO 42001, and I'm lazy, I copied and pasted directly from the standard, is really talking about that it's for the management and for the establishing and implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an AI management system. And the purpose is to meet applicable regulatory requirements, obligations related to interested parties, and expectations from them. And that is the key. You cannot have an effective management system if you don't know what are you doing and the requirements and expectations of interested parties. And interested parties could be obviously your direct customers. Let's say you are producing a medical device that is being used in a hospital by physicians. So the customer would be, in this case, the hospital, right? But yes, there are also interested parties as in the physicians. And guess what? Interested parties as in the patient. And interested parties as in FDA. Interested parties as in insurance companies. So this is the ecosystem of interested parties that an organization really needs to consider when implementing an AI management system. It goes without saying that this slide is a little bit outdated because it says there at the end, expected to be published end 2023. I'm very happy to say it has been published in December last year. So now the standard is out. And yes, we have already certified some organizations to that standard, but I will come back to that later. The very general structure of ISO 42001 is there are some management clauses. There's an Annex A with controls, and there's an Annex B with guidance. And there's an Annex C and Annex D, which are both informative. So the management clauses, where the standard is talking about the context of the organization's leadership and so on and so forth. That's very well known. We have later on the slide depicting comparison between 9001 and ISO 42001. But then there's also the Annex A control, which is providing requirements that need to be implemented by an organization based upon the result of the risk assessment they have done. But then there's also the Annex B which provides an guidance for implementation of those controls. And it's an interesting combination because it's a requirement standard that also has guidance. So another view of the first chapters, clauses. You may say, oh, I know that because I've seen it. Yes, absolutely, because that's intentionally. The ISO 42001, as I mentioned already a couple of minutes ago, is based upon the high-level structure of ISO documents, which requires that all management system standards are following the exact same structure. So here is the slide I promised earlier that is depicting a comparison between ISO 9001 and ISO 42001. On the top, we have the already identified clauses 4 to 8, context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operations, performance evaluation, and improvement. As I said, they are the same. Then here we have the blue area that is exactly the same. Then we have the grayish area that are specific to the QMS. And then we have the greenish one that is the QMS and AIMS specifics, which we now see here. So when you look at that picture, you see that there are some areas that are specific for the QMS and some areas that are exactly the same. But then there are also, let's say, specifics, which makes sense because obviously both standards have different purposes, different scopes, different applications. But at the end of the day, it's still very similar. So if you have already implemented a quality management system based upon ISO 9001 or ISO 13485, implementing a 42001 management system is relatively speaking easy because you have already the fundamental concept. The organization does understand the benefits of defined procedures and processes. You have already tools like internal audits and corrective action process. So all this will help you to implement an AIMS as well. So summary of ISO 42001, the 2023 edition, first edition of the standard. Very generically speaking, it specifies the requirements and provides guidance for the establishment and implementation and maintaining and continually improving an AI management system. It helps to identify the products and services an organization is delivering and utilizing an AI for that. It helps the organization to develop and use AI systems in a responsible way. And it is applicable to any and all organizations, regardless of size, type, and nature. The main clauses are the same as we know from other management systems. Annex A lists 9 controls, which provide the organization with a reference for meeting 39 organizational objectives. And then there are 3 other annexes B, C, and D. There's one area in the standard that is very, very important from my point of view, and this is the AI impact assessment. The AI impact assessment is really addressing what happens in case some kind of risk materializes. So in a risk assessment, we only say, is it potentially possible that? Yes, it is possible. To prevent that from happening, or at least reduce the probability of happening, we will have the following controls, and that's it. In the impact assessment, we are then asking, so now let's assume it happened. What will be the impact? What will be the result of that undesirable situation? So really have a very close look at that when you are implementing ISO 42001, because that is a very important concept that is, I wouldn't say unique, but definitely something newer in management system implementation. So here I also have listed a quick comparison between the difference of risk assessment and the impact analysis. We all have learned to read, so I will not read that to you. But obviously, I think I also don't need to repeat. The slide deck will be shared with the audience after the webinar. So if you want to have a quick look at that later on, that's fine and highly suggested. You know, at the end of the day, it's about understanding what kind of AI system we have and what could be potentially happened to it, and what the AI system potentially could lead to. I mentioned earlier, we have already issued an ISO 42001 certificate. At the time, it was only issued against the FDIS, the final draft international standard. And the handover was actually done in October to our customer based out of Poland. And the entire project was spearheaded and managed by SGS Poland for a customer in Warsaw as well as here in the States. They are not in the medical device industry, but they are doing some aerial surveillance activities, and they were the first SGS customer obtaining or receiving a 42001 certificate. And we are very, very happy to be one of the first, if not the first, certification body globally to issue such a certificate. So what is the certification process? Well, if your company has been certified to any ISO management system standard, you really know it already, but nonetheless, it all starts with the application and the quote. And I really would like to emphasize there is an application. You really need to tell us, we would like to get certified, and you need to provide us the scope, or at least a first initial description of what the scope is. Because at the end of the day, that's very important for us to identify then, can we do it? Do we have the resources? Do we have the knowledge? Do we have the capability? And yes, obviously then to provide you with the subsequent quote. Immediately after that, if not before that, you should really ask yourself a very, let's say, provocative and inconvenient question. And this is, do we actually know what ISO 42001 says? Well, if yes, wonderful. If not, I strongly suggest to familiarize yourself with the standard. For example, via public courses SGS is offering via our SGS Academy. It's the usual courses, you know, introduction, overview, and in the near future, we will also have lead auditors classes for the standard. Because at the end of the day, no, you don't want to be in that situation that I personally experienced, where, you know, after something like 2 or 3 hours into the audit, I had this funny feeling the customer had not read the standard. And that was not 42001, obviously, that was some other management system standard a couple of years back. And then I said, so why do we not just read what the standard says? And the client says, well, that's great. Well, so why are you not reading it to me? And I said, no. Grab your copy of the standard, and then we read it together. Well, the client stands up, leaves the room, comes back within a minute, and has a FedEx envelope and literally rips it open and pulls out the copy of the standard. That is not a good start for an audit. Sorry to say, yes, you do need to have a copy of the standard, and yes, you need to be able to demonstrate to the auditors that you do understand what the requirements are by having, you know, some kind of training related to 42001 if you are going to implement the standard. We do offer what we call a gap assessment, which is nothing else than a pre-assessment. This is the kind of audit where auditors come in and identify potential weaknesses so that the customer will be able to implement those before we go to the next step, the stage 1. During the stage 1, we are confirming that the implementation of the system is on the right track. Many years ago, we call that documentation review. And yes, there is some truth to that, as in making sure that the required documentation is there, that the system fundamentally is implemented, but it's not an in-depth assessment. The in-depth assessment is really done in the stage 2, which is what I call the Big Bang audit, where we are verifying that the system is indeed fully implemented. Let's assume there are a couple of minor non-conformances, no big deal. You need to provide us with the corrective action plan. We will review and to implement. So sooner or later, hopefully, you're getting certified, or should I say the organization's management system is getting certified. And then, of course, you need to share the success with the world. But most importantly, the ongoing surveillance audits that are happening once per year will help the organization to continuously improve their management system. In my career of 25 plus years of auditing, I never, ever, ever have seen a perfect system. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. It's all about identifying the weaknesses and work on the weaknesses to make them less problematic. I even go so far to say that identified non-conformances are opportunities to make the company more competitive. Because rest assured, your competitors have the same kind of issues. The only question is who is able to identify the issues faster and is able to fix them faster and in a better way. And that makes then the organization more competitive. So how can we help? Well, I mentioned already the SGS Academy. So right now we have a one-day overview, which is really just skimming the iceberg, so to speak, and making sure that people do understand what is NAIMS. But then there's also a 2-day introduction course, which is ready to be delivered. And then we are currently working on finalizing our auditors and implementer classes, which will be offered in due course. And as I mentioned already, we are offering assessment services, so certification services to ISO 42001. Right now, none of the certification bodies is accredited because none of the ABs, the accreditation body, is offering right now accreditation because 42006, the standard that is telling us, the certification bodies, what we need to do is not published yet. It's actually just in this draft international standard, so it's not even in final draft. But yes, it's being discussed on SC42. So I can tell you that as the result of the publication of the FDIS, there were a couple of hundreds of change requests. So I would be not surprised if there would be a second DIS, but I'm not sure. But hopefully sooner or later we will have that standard available. And once it's available, the accreditation bodies will offer accreditation. And once that is possible, obviously SGS will be getting accredited to deliver accredited certification service. But in the meantime, yes, we do issue and we do assess organizations to the standard, and we can issue certificates. I also would like to point out that we have a series of webinars planned. The first one was already on February the 6th, talking about fairness in AI and its relation to social well-being. And then we will have, on a monthly interval, more webinars coming, talking about robustness and performance, privacy and security, transparency and explainability, human agency and oversight, as well as accountability. For all of those webinars, we also have white papers, and we will provide you with links to those white papers in subsequent communications. That said,
yes, I can. Yeah,
I think, Balázs, this is your slide.
Yes,
again, right?
Absolutely. So just to quickly summarize a couple of highlights that what we foresee how AI is going to transform the medical device industry and maybe our society as a whole. So a couple of highlights. AI-assisted tools will reduce drug and device research and development life cycles, both software and hardware design iterations. Clinical and financial decisions will be more data-based. The human bias will be more limited in the future. as the technology gets better, heavy ethical debates are expected. Can we do something versus should we do something? Because the technology will enable us to pretty much do everything. There's going to be increased regulatory standardization, enforcement, and compliance expectations. So now that we will be able to review a larger body of documentation faster, probably sampling sizes will increase, or there's going to be more continuous monitoring of compliance. Broader adoption of acceptance of AI-assisted tools in patient and layman user-facing applications. So, for example, these chatbots and those type of applications are going to ramp up even further. Connected AI will enable systems to leverage synergies across the whole patient journey. So it's not just going to be individual AI applications, but when AI-enabled applications are going to talk to each other, there's going to be further benefits of improving the patient outcomes and the whole patient experience throughout the treatment journey and the diagnostics. Enhanced patient engagement, because healthcare through the above factors is going to be more readily accessible, including more affordable and less waiting times, and is going to be more customized for more patients. So some patients who currently have limited access to healthcare will have more access, and the cost of customized medicine and customized treatment is going to go down in the future. So the overall outcome is, again, likely will improve. And it's overall, the whole AI implementation and proliferation is going to have a broad socioeconomic effect. Largely, it's going to impact fertility, population, life expectancy, and the acceptance of human augmentation with different implants, for example, and different medical technologies. Maybe it will also have some cognitive implants as well. So that's what we see in the future. And I think that's it from my side.
I think we have a couple of questions, and Balázs, if you don't mind, I would like to grab one of the questions and answer this. So there's one question that says, for certification to 42001, are other registrars offering certificates of compliance or only SGS? Sorry, I cannot really talk about our friends and our competitors, what they are doing. It's really up to them to publish that. But I would be not surprised if indeed other certification bodies would offer certification services to that standard as well. But hey, why not coming to SGS? We have experience in auditing to the standard, and we have the necessary capabilities and capacity. So please feel free to reach out to us. And then there is a question related to how does ISO 42001 interact with ISO 13485? Do we need to get ISO 42001 certified in addition to ISO 13485? Well, that is the old question in terms of do we need to get certified. It's really about what your customers tell you, respectively what you as an organization think is prudent. At the end of the day, a third-party assessment and a subsequent certification is really providing an enhanced trust for your customers, right? Because what is an external certificate? It's about providing assurance that the organization has indeed implemented what they ought to do. And thus, a certificate by SGS will tell your customers, yes, you have done the right thing. So I think it's definitely something to consider. Whether you have to, that's a totally different story. But I think from a competitive landscape perspective, it's absolutely prudent to do so.
Yes.
Want to grab another
sorry,
question?
before you go on, Willy, just maybe let me chime on this one as well. So from a regulatory standpoint, it is not mandatory for you to get certified, but it is a convenient way to show compliance. Just like Willy said, it is important that you implement these measures in your system if you have an AI-enabled software. It is important that you implement these measures, but it is not strictly necessary to to be certified. Certification can also be a good tool to get an independent third-party look at your compliance. So if you don't get an external feedback on how well you are doing in this case, you may lose focus and your level of compliance may decrease over time. Go ahead, Willy.
You know, I only wanted to say, is there any other question you would like to grab? Or Chris, is there a question you would like to answer?
No.
There was one that says, how different is ISO 42000 from CyberSecure from SCC?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know what cybersecure is from SCC, so I can't really speak to that one. 42,000 I now have, but I've read through, but I don't know what cybersecure is. This gets back to there's over 200 standards in play. And so it's like, as this settles out, there's going to be winners like the ISO one, the 42,000. I mean, it was certainly the first one out there, and then it'll evolve away, and that'll change as well. So at the moment, I would say 42,001 is your best bet to go with anything, and sort of close your eyes for a while, because there's going to be a lot of flurry in that market.
Yes, and you know, by just looking at the title, CyberSecure, that suggests that it's more a standard or framework related to cybersecurity or information security, which would be then more direction 27,001. So that, of course, we cannot have a secured AI system without proper protecting our information security and our cybersecurity posture, right? But that 42,001 is really focused on protecting and implementing and maintaining properly running AI systems.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. Then there's also a question.
One thing I will volunteer on here is that you touched on this about ongoing evaluations of this and your assessment. And I think this is really important. We now have to do this for non-AI based medical devices, but it's even more important for AI, is continuing, sustaining testing, okay, over the life of that product. And you're going to have to continue to look. This isn't a one and done sort of thing. It's going to be an ongoing thing. So get ready for it, because you need to schedule and budget for these activities.
Yes, indeed. There's one last question I would like to address, and obviously Balazs and Chris, feel free to add as well. So the question is, should a manufacturer currently developing an AI-assisted medical device opt in to implement ISO 13485 or ISO 42001 for their quality management system, QMS? Alternatively, is it a recommendation for companies to adapt or adopt both QMS standards? I would like to emphasize, yes, 13485 is a QMS, is a quality management system. However, ISO 42001 is not a quality management system. It's an AI management system. And that has implications. These are differences, right? So there's a reason why there are two different documents out there. My suggestion is, listen to your customers first and do the right thing. But that said, once you have implemented a management system, implementing the second management system is, relatively speaking, easy. In this particular case, my suggestion is really have a very, very in-depth look at 42001 and then make the decision. Balazs, want to add as well?
Yes, so you don't really even, as a legal manufacturer or manufacturer within the medical device industry, you don't really have a chance. If you are working on medical devices or have medical device related activities, then likely your customers are going to want you to have an ISO 13485 certification. The regulators also, as I mentioned before, they don't necessarily insist that you have the certificate, but during the regulatory inspections and audits, the auditors are going to check if your QMS is ISO 13485 compliant. Now the US FDA is directly adopting ISO 13485, so that portion is more, I would say, mandatory to implement. The AIMS is a good practice to implement, strongly recommended if you have AI, and then getting certification for either one of these management systems is, as Willy said, depends on your customer needs. And I think that's all we had
So let
time
me jump
for.
in and answer the question. Yes, both.
Yes,
both.
overall, that's the conclusion.
That's it. Thank you very, very much to the audience hanging out with us over this last hour. I hope and I trust that you found this informative and beneficial. Feel free to reach out to Balazs, to Greg, to Chris, to myself. Our respective email addresses are here on this very last slide. Also, please follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and LinkedIn. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, in the follow-up email, we will provide you also with links to our white papers. And stay tuned in for upcoming and future webinars. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.